father, he had a whip and a chair, and he gave me a trumpet. And it was like practice every day, kid, and then you can go out and play baseball.
Hello, this is Skitch Henderson with The Music Makers, brought to you by York Heating and Air Conditioning. For the next hour, this week's music maker, Harry James, will be telling you about himself from his early beginnings with a circus in Texas to an outstanding trumpet player with such bands as Benny Goodman, to a struggling band leader discovering a skinny kid singing in New Jersey named, believe it or not, Frank Sinatra, to one of the nation's most successful band leaders. You know, for many years in America, since we've had the sound of big bands, I suppose, the predominance of great instrumentalists have been the men that have really been the leaders that have lasted. And you know, I can't think of anybody that I would respect more, know more along the line, first as a sideman and then as a great leader, than the gentleman with us right now, Mr. Harry James.
Thank you, Skitch. That's very nice of you.
Now let's get things started with the great Harry James classic. That was The Mole, performed by this week's music maker, Harry James. Harry, tell us the age-old question. How did you get started in show business?
My father was a band director in the circus. My mother was a prima donna. And I was born in a circus. In fact, I was born in Albany, Georgia. And 13 days later, we rejoined, my mother and I rejoined the show, which they told me. I don't remember it. And another 6 weeks later, she was back doing her aerial performance. And by the time I was 4 years old, I was working in the show like a contortionist and so forth. And then a friend of mine who he was a drummer. And he sort of taught me a little thing to play on the drums, so I played the second band on the parade with the drums. And then my old man said to me, my dad said, you want to get into the business, you know, and this and that. So he gave me a trumpet. He let me sit out in back of the, first I had a peckhorn, was I played in the band that had the vowels written down for me. So my dad says, okay, if you're serious about playing the horn. So he gave me a trumpet, and he put me out in back of the band, and he said, just go ahead and blow and blow and blow, and then we'll get together. So after about a year of that, he started teaching me, and by the time I was 12 years old, I was playing the first trumpet in his band.
And that was the beginning of a long musical career that led to recording such great tunes as Strictly Instrumental. We'll be back with our music maker, Harry James, right after this.
Imagine a retirement community especially for mobile homes. A retirement community where the paved streets are tree-shaded, where the beautiful Ozark Hills surround a peaceful rural setting, where the size lot you want is the size you'll get. And all this country quiet, just 2 miles from active, entertaining Branson, Missouri. Only a half mile from the dam, Table Rock Terrace will be the retirement community of your dreams. Find out more. Stop by Branson Mobile Homes on Highway 165 or just phone 334-8661. Table Rock Terrace, the absolute best of both worlds.
This is Skitch Henderson, and our guest today on The Music Makers is Harry James. Harry, you spent time in the trumpet section of the Benny Goodman Band, but became restless to have your own band.
Well, the reason I left the Goodman Band is because I was tired of playing sing, sing, sing. So that's why I started my own band.
That's the best statement I ever heard. Now, you had some success with an instrumental version of the Judy Garland hit, You Made Me Love You. Why don't you tell us how that came about?
We had recorded Sinner Kissed an Angel and a couple of other songs, and on the backside I had to beg him to let me do You Made Me Love You. And WAW, I kept hearing this thing and say, oh, Judy Garland singing, you know. I thought, well, maybe they'd like an instrumental version of it. So I talked them into it, and I put 4 strings in. I put a violin, viola, and cello.
String quartet.
Yeah, a string quartet. And we played it and so forth. And now we're in Pittsburgh, and we get to the Brooklyn Paramount, and we didn't know what was happening or anything else, and so we drive up after traveling all night. We get there by 8 o'clock in the morning. We start to get out of the bus, and here's this big crowd around the theater. So I said, what happened? Is there a fire or something? You know, I didn't know what was going on. They said, no, are you kidding? We're going to go see Harry James. I said, you got to be kidding. So it wasn't until we went on the stage that I realized that Martin Block had played our record so much that it was a hit.
We'll listen to it right now. We'll hear more from Harry James after this.
Back in 1963, John Deere built its first lawn and garden tractor. Many are still running. So when the folks at Cotterman Equipment Company invite you to look at their tractors, go ahead. These tractors have superior design features, and they're human-engineered for your comfort. Choose from 7 models with 10 to 20 horsepower and 50 attachments. Test drive a John Deere lawn and garden tractor soon at Cotterman Equipment Company, 3925 South Glenstone, just a mile and a half south of Battlefield Mall.
The following program is a tribute to Mr. Harry James, who passed away this morning of cancer in Las Vegas at the age of 67. My guest, Harry James, I should say. Harry, something else that's unique with me, at least, because I've always been a fan of people who sing for a living. You've had the most incredible succession of singers, starting with a gentleman by the name of Frank Sinatra.
Well, we've been very lucky, Skitch. In fact, when we were working the Paramount Theater and making scale, let's put it that way, you know. And so I went home one night and I turned on the radio. And in those days, they had the remotes from all the different places throughout the country. So I heard this one remote from Jersey, and I heard this kid sing. to my wife at the time, Louise. I said, Louise Tobin. I said, Louise, I said, this kid sounds beautiful. Let's go hear him. So the next day, we went out to the place called the Rustic Cabins. And I walked in and I said, I'd like to hear the boy singer. And he said, well, the kid's an MC. He said, he sings once in a while. I said, well, can he sing now? So he came up and he sang night and day. And he got through and he came over and I talked to him and I said, we're working the Paramount Theater and we need a boy vocalist. And he says, oh, that's great. So he came down the next day and he signed a contract with us for $75 a week for a year. And his name was Frank Sinatra. And then we made the first record he ever made was when we did Little Street in Singapore, Who Told You I Cared, My Buddy, and All or Nothing at All.
And what a hit.
Nothing at all. Half a love never appealed to me. If your heart never could yield to me, then I'd rather have nothing at all. Nothing at all. If it's love, there is no in-between. Why begin and cry for something that might have been? No, I'd rather have nothing at all. Oh, please don't bring your lips so close to my cheek. Don't smile or I'll be lost beyond recall. The kiss in your eyes and the touch of your hand makes me weak. And my heart may grow dizzy and cold. And if I fell under the spell of your call, I would be caught in the undertow. And so you see, I've got to say no, 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 nothing at all. Nothing at all.
The Harry James Band with vocalist, a youthful, very youthful Frank Sinatra. You know, Harry, back then the people who ran your record label, Columbia Records, well, they didn't really appreciate the vocal talents of Mr. Sinatra, as I recall.
You know, in those days, they were like worse than the baseball owners, you know. They said, here's what you do. So they said to me, get rid of the kid singer or else we don't renew your contract. So I said, well, I'm sorry, but I like him. So we got fired from Columbia. And then we went into Eli Oberstein with the different things that he did, which he incidentally asked me to do Flight of the Bumblebee in Carnival of Venice. It was his idea. It was Eli Oberstein's idea to do these, you know. And I said, sure, I can do them because there's nothing. It's so fast, who knows if you make a mistake anyway.
Only one man can play it like that, Flight of the Bumblebee. When we come back on The Music Makers, our guest Harry James will tell us more about his band, their featured vocalists, and the songs they made famous.
7:29 here at KLSM, Big Band 1060. Looking at the weather forecast this evening, clear and cool with a low of about 58 degrees. Wednesday calls for sunny skies, highs in the mid to upper 80s, and winds out of the south at 5 to 15 miles per hour. Wednesday night, clear skies and temperatures dropping down in the low to mid 60s. The extended outlook Friday through Sunday, fair and hot. Highs in the upper 80s to low 90s, nighttime lows in the upper 60s to lower 70s. Little or no rain expected. In the extended outlook, once again for tonight, clear and cool with a low of 58. Currently, under mostly clear skies, we stand with a temperature reading of 78 degrees here at Big Band 1060, KLSM.
This is Skitch Henderson on The Music Makers with this week's very special guest, Mr. Harry James. You know, Harry, another gentleman who sang with your organization is a man that I like very, very much, the late, great Dick Hayes.
Dick was one of my real buddies, you know, and we were very close, and it was a real wild way that he came into the organization, because when Frank left the band, I think it was Jimmy Saunders that came in and sang with us for a couple of weeks, and we went back to New York and we had to do some rehearsing. We had some new charts coming on. Jack Mathias was our arranger and all. So this kid came up and he said, in fact, Larry Shane brought him up, who was partners with Hank Mancini, as you might know, later on in the years. So Larry came up and he says, I want you to hear this kid's song. He's got some good songs. So the kid sat down at the piano and he played, you know, adequately, and he sang. And I said, well, I don't like the songs, but I'd like to hire you as a vocalist. And he says, well, that sounds great to me.
And here's the sound of the James Band and Mr. Haynes.
poverty may come to me, it's true. But what care I say? I'll get by as long as I have you.
Harry James, music maker supreme, and you have had wonderful people in front of your band besides yourself, especially Helen Forrest.
Well, Skitch, we've been very fortunate. You know, some band leaders have a lot of soloists, and I've always been fortunate to have vocalists, and I give them every shot. I think the first time that any band leader ever gave a girl the verse and a full chorus was when I gave it to Helen, and when she did like I Don't Want to Walk Without You, and I had the craziest dream and these things, because I figured if they're going to sing, give them a shot at it, because I got a shot at it. And Joey Stein and Sammy Kahn, they came up to me and he said, we got a song we want you to do. And he played it for me. He says, I don't want to walk without you, baby. You know, I said, well, that's a great song, but I said, I'd like to do it as a ballad. So Helen did it as a ballad, and it was fantastic, right?
A giant.
So now they came back, and he said, now we got another one. It's called, I've heard that song before. And he says, I've heard that song before. Right? I said, now that's the one we'll do in the other tempo. So we did that one. We just reversed both of the tempos, and they were both million sellers.
And here's the sound. That's Harry James with songstress Helen Forrest. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
If ugly bugs are invading your home turf, Ortho and Aggieville have the perfect solution. Ortho Diazinon in liquid or granular form. Just sprinkled ortho-diazon granules around the edges of your house to keep out ants, ticks, fleas, mites, crickets, and other home-invading insects. Or get to the root of the problem by spraying ortho-diazonon liquid in your yard to kill insects wherever they hide. You'll find diazonon and a whole range of ortho products to solve all your lawn and garden problems at Aggieville, 1350 St. Louis.
The following program is a tribute to Mr. Harry James, who died this morning in Las Vegas from lymphatic cancer at the age of 67.
I'm talking to Harry James, the music maker supreme. Another lady who sang with the orchestra, I knew her as a roommate of Dinah Shore at one time. Her name was Kitty Callan.
Yeah. Kitty was a beautiful little lady, and she sang real good. And she came in with the band after she had been, I think, with the Thorn Hill Band, one of the bands, the Teagarden. Jack Teagarden's band. I think she'd worked with Teagarden's band. And so anyway, when Helen decided to go on her own, and we were looking for a vocalist, and so someone said, why don't you call Kitty? And then Kitty came in, and the first thing that she did with us was See the Light, like you're beginning to see the light. So we had a nice association for a couple of years, and then she also went out on her own. But the great thing about vocalists, you know, you love to get them a step and present them, because it's flattering to me to have someone on the stage that does well, because then I can be proud.
I never cared much for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the light. I never went in for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now when you turn the lamp down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused the spark that's a forlorn fire now. I never made love by lantern shine. I never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light.
That's the great band of Mr. Harry James and the voice of Kitty Callan. You know, Harry, I suppose the great bands always have standards, and I associate 2 o'clock jump with your organization. In fact, I always do.
Well, that's very flattering because I associate 2 o'clock jump to the 1 o'clock jump, which I did with Benny. Then I added these triplets the last few times I was with Goodman. So when we started recording, I said, this is not the same thing. So since I added the triplets, let's call it the 2 o'clock jump. And that's how come the 2 o'clock jump has the triplets and the 1 o'clock jump doesn't.
And what a smash, and here's that sound. That's the classic 2 o'clock jump from the band of Harry James. We'll hear more words and music from Harry when we return with The Music Makers.
It's time to move forward with Bell Savings. Let Bell help you plan your financial future. Choose from 30-month certificates, 18-month certificates, Now accounts and Super Now accounts, money market deposit accounts, regular passbook savings, plus direct deposit, save by mail, night depository, free parking, fast drive-up windows, and more than 60 years of financial experience. Bell Savings.
Skitch Henderson here with music maker Mr. Harry James. You know, Harry, I refer back to the band that had strings, which at that time was definitely something of a departure, and especially a melody called Sleepy Lagoon.
Well, this is a very funny story about this particular song because Columbia didn't want us to do strings because Artie Shaw had the string section and he'd done Night and Day and Begin to Begin and all these things, which were very big. And they said, well, we don't want to copy him. I said, well, I don't want to copy him. I just want to flavor into this particular thing. So all of a sudden, we're going to do this particular arrangement. And everybody was mad at us, and I said, I must use the strings with it. And Jack Mathias wrote an introduction, and it was a beautiful setting for like a band. You know, no one had done this, no. And he had all the harp and the whole thing going and everything. It turned out that it was very, very pleasurable to do, and it turned out to be a hit.
Taste is talent, and here's that sound. My guess is Harry James, and Harry, I have to be unsubtle with you or show a great lack of subtlety and tell you that...
Why change?
Watch that, please, now. I have to tell you that the name of our show happens to be The Music Makers.
Yeah.
I hope you'll stand at attention and deliver a soliloquy on your, what to me is your theme.
Well, of course, this is not my theme, but...
To me, I said it's your
well, to you it's your theme. But I must tell you the story about how Music Makers came about. We were playing in Boston, and we just started the band. Naturally, we were starving, as all bands do when they start. And I was sitting in the room one day, and I said, I want to write this little thing. So I wrote this part by part, no score. I wrote the first trumpet part, I wrote the tenor part, then I wrote the alto part, the trombone part. And they said, what are you going to call it? I said, well, why don't we call it Music Makers? And they said, why? I said, I don't know why. And that was the way it came about.
Music Maker theme from its originator, this week's Music Maker Supreme, trumpeter, arranger, and band leader, Mr. Harry James. This is Skitch Henderson. The Music Makers is brought to you by York Heating and Air Conditioning. We have the smart ones to save you energy and money. The Music Makers is produced by Norwood Productions. Recording engineer Dave Levan. Executive producer Ted Levan.